Hey guys, it's Evan and I'm filming another boa breeding tips video for you on this drive to work. This is number 5 and it's about humidity. The other thing I'd remind you is that this is a series and I introduced it in boa breeding tips number 1. I'm going to release these, we're going to release the first like 6 or 7 all at once, start numbering 1 through whatever. Go back and look at the first one to understand the context of this video. And also I'll remind you that I have an offer that I like to give you guys if I get some more engagement on this channel. So please like and subscribe. If you haven't, please comment. It really is important to me. I do enjoy the engagement with you guys. I do really care about you guys and want to make stuff that's of interest to you and stuff that you want to see. So let's get into humidity. And the last 2 videos I'm talking about with the keeper controllable factors that I introduced in video 1 is humidity, and then the last one's gonna be temperature. And I saved these 2 for last because in my mind and how I have to think about these, they're the most slippery and hard to hold on to. And if you remember when we talk about keeper controllable factors, I talked about applying seasonality, meaning that throughout the year, not just cold cycling in the winter, but throughout the year, we're creating peaks and valleys of these seasonal factors that keepers can control in hopes that we're making a big, broad push to toward environmental factors that will stimulate breeding in our boas. So by doing all these factors together, you can hopefully increase your likelihood of success. And I think that also it allows you to not have to apply any one factor so heavily. So by applying all 4 of these factors, you might not have to cool your animals as heavily as you would. But let's talk about humidity as one of the factors. I actually think humidity is one of the lesser factors. Although there are some definite plays I think you can do to stimulate breeding activities when playing the weather. But the slippery concepts that I want you to understand are relative humidity, and I also want you to understand that you cannot impose upon your snakes your high-end humidity. You can only impose upon them your low-end humidity, your low-end ambient humidity. And so let's get into that. Relative humidity is the idea that warm air can hold more, or that the amount of moisture that air can hold is relative to its temperature. Warm air can hold more water than cool air. So 70% humidity at 80 degrees is much wetter than 70% humidity at 65 degrees. Relative humidity is different than absolute humidity. But in keeping, we always talk about relative humidity. So we're talking about something that's an interlock of the temperature and the holding capacity of air at that temperature. And people always say, well, I keep my boas at a static 80% humidity, and I don't know why in the winter I'm having trouble shedding because it's still 80% humidity. That's because your ambient temperatures are cooler, meaning that even though you're still at the same relative humidity, there's less moisture in the air, so your snakes are actually drier, and that's why you'll see shedding issues even if you have the same relative humidity in the summer in the nighttime. This is just a general keeping concept, but it applies to breeding in the idea that if your room is like 99% of rooms in America, it experiences quite a bit of seasonal ambient room temperature variation. My room, in the winter time, I have to heat it. I only heat it to about 70 most of the time. And between the artificial heat and the fact that it's cooler, it is very dry in my room. And I do things in my cages to moderate that up to about 60% humidity. But because it is so cool, it is much drier than 60-70% humidity in my room when it's 78 to 84 degrees in the summer when I have the windows open. So a lot of your seasonal humidity changes will happen naturally if your room temperatures vary. And I will just tell you that most of what you can do is dependent on your ambient room temperatures. And if you have that variation of 10 degrees, you're going to be creating a lot of natural humidity variations, even if your relative humidity is pretty close to the same. So that's a big concept. The other concept is that you cannot impose your highest humidity on your snakes. You can only impose your low end humidity. It's the same with temperature. So these are why they're slippery concepts, okay? And the way I keep my snakes is I keep them so that they have a relative humidity in the cage of about 60%. I keep them pretty dry. I think it's better to keep the cages pretty dry most of the time. And then I provide humid hide boxes, and those are just plastic boxes full of damp moss. And those boxes always have a little bit of condensation on the side of them. So there's always 100% humidity that's available to the snakes. I think that's important because at any given time they might need that spike in humidity. But if you realize that in my cages at any given time, there's always that area of 100% humidity, I cannot make the high-end humidity wetter or drier. What I'm doing is I'm really making a play across the broad side of the cage, the ambient cage conditions, to make and this is all happening with room temperature, but my broadside temperatures, or my broad spaces in the cage, the not microenvironments, are much drier or wetter depending on the ambient room temperature, which is dependent on the season that I'm in. So that's how you can control humidity, even if your relative humidity is the same. And that's just a key understanding, and also that you cannot deny your snake that 100% humidity and have it do well. You can only expose it to wetter and drier ambient conditions. So in the summer, even if it moved out of its humid hide box, it's much wetter. So those are just general keeping things. And the thing that I actually think might be more important in the context of breeding is making humidity plays based on the weather. And I'll just tell you, if it's raining outside, spray your snakes. If it's thunderstorming, spray your snakes. Don't want to keep them super wet all the time, but play your weather events, especially when your snakes are paired. I'm not talking necessarily once your female is gravid, but when you have your animals paired, if it's raining outside, hose your snakes down. If it's thundering, definitely hose your snakes down. You're just trying to coincide in their cage the type of moisture event that might coincide with that barometric drops in pressure that lead to rain. So that's just my tips with humidity, and I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope that makes sense. If that's not making sense to you, it's a slippery concept. Make a comment, ask a question, and I'll clarify for you. It's a real slippery concept that I've just really started to hold on to, is that idea that you can only impose ambient or low-end conditions, not the high-end conditions when you're set up on a gradient like we all are. So take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.